The air in the Valley of Elah was thick, heavy with the scent of dry earth, rusting iron, and the paralyzing stench of fear. It was not merely a geographical location, it was a wound in the land, a scar separating two ancient enemies. On one ridge stood the armies of Israel, ragged, weary, and trembling. On the opposing ridge, like a dark storm gathering on the horizon, stood the Philistines, conquerors, ironsmiths, destroyers of nations. For 40 days the sun had risen over these hills, but it brought no warmth to the men of King Saul. It brought only shame. For 40 days a silence would fall over the valley every morning and every evening, a silence so profound that even the birds seemed to hold their breath. And then the silence would be broken, not by the clash of swords or the roar of a charging army, but by the voice of one man, a voice that shook the ground like thunder, a voice that turned brave warriors into cowards. This is not a fairy tale. This is not a simple story of a boy throwing a stone. This is the account of a spiritual collision between two kingdoms, two gods, and two destinies. This is the day the world learned that the size of the enemy does not matter when the battle belongs to the Lord. This is the true story of David and Goliath. To understand the terror, one must understand the monster. Goliath of Gath was not simply a tall man. He was a biological anomaly, a relic of an ancient violent age, perhaps a descendant of the Anakim, the giants who had terrified the spies of Israel generations before. He stood 6 cubits and a span, over 9 feet of muscle and malice. He was a siege engine made of flesh and bone. Imagine him stepping out from the Philistine ranks. The ground trembles under his weight. He is clad in a coat of scale armor of bronze, weighing 5,000 shekels, over 120 pounds. Just his coat was heavier than most soldiers in the Israelite camp. Bronze greaves protected his massive legs, and a bronze javelin was slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, thick and unbreakable, and its iron point alone weighed 600 shekels. He was a walking fortress, a tank in an age of infantry. Every morning he would descend into the valley, his armor gleaming under the harsh Middle Eastern sun, blinding those who looked upon him. He did not just challenge them to a fight, he challenged their existence. "Why have you come out to draw up for battle?" His voice boomed, echoing off the canyon walls. "Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me." The proposition was simple, brutal, and ancient. Representative warfare, single combat. If he wins, Israel becomes slaves. If Israel wins, the Philistines serve. But Goliath knew there was no risk. Who could stand against him? He was the champion of Dagon, the fish god. He was invincible. And up on the ridge, King Saul, the man who was chosen specifically because he was a head taller than any other Israelite, sat in his tent. He was the only one with armor that might come close to matching Goliath's. But Saul was paralyzed. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from him, leaving behind only a hollow shell of a king, consumed by paranoia and dread. Israel was a sheep without a shepherd, freezing in the shadow of the wolf. Miles away, in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, the world was different. There was no shouting, only the wind in the olive trees and the bleating of sheep. Here lived David, the youngest son of Jesse. He was not a soldier, he was a provider, a watcher, a musician. While his 3 oldest brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, were at the front lines freezing in fear, David was fighting battles in the dark that no one saw. The wilderness is a cruel teacher. To protect his sheep, David had learned the art of silence, of observation, and of lethal precision. When a lion came from the thicket, eyes glowing in the moonlight, hunger driving it toward the lambs, David did not run. When a bear charged from the shadows, David did not call for help. He learned that the God of the armies of Israel was also the God of the lonely pastures. He learned that fear is a liar. He had felt the warm blood of predators on his hands. He had torn them apart by their beards. He knew something the soldiers did not. Power does not come from bronze or iron. It comes from the Spirit. On this particular day, Jesse sent David on a mundane errand. Take an ephah of this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and run to the camp to your brothers. It was a supply run, a delivery boy's task. David left his sheep with a keeper and set off early in the morning. He arrived at the encampment just as the army was going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. It was a performance, a hollow ritual. They shouted for war, but they prayed for peace. David ran to the battle line, eager, his heart pounding with the patriotism of youth. He found his brothers, he greeted them, and then it happened. The shadow fell. Goliath stepped out. For the 41st time, the insults rained down. I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. The men of Israel pulled back. Panic rippled through the ranks like a disease. Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. But David heard something different. He didn't hear a military threat. He heard blasphemy. He looked at the trembling soldiers, confused. To David, Goliath wasn't a monster. He was an offense to God. What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? David asked. For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? His brother Eliab heard him and burned with anger. Why have you come down? Eliab snapped, his voice dripping with the insecurity of a coward confronting bravery. I know your presumption and the evil of your heart. But David turned away. The fire was already lit. The words reached King Saul. There is someone who is not afraid. The meeting between the young shepherd and the broken king is one of the most ironic scenes in history. Saul, the veteran warrior, looked at David, ruddy, bright-eyed, handsome, barely a man, and scoffed. You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. David's response was chillingly calm. He recounted the lion, he recounted the bear, and then he gave the theological verdict. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul, perhaps out of desperation, or perhaps hoping to get rid of this troublesome boy, agreed. Go, and the Lord be with you. But then Saul tried to do the only thing he knew how to do. He tried to turn David into a soldier. He clothed David with his own armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head. He strapped his own sword to David's waist. David tried to walk. The metal clanked. The weight was oppressive. It was suffocating. This was the armor of a king who had lost his faith. It was the armor of the world. It was designed to protect the flesh. But David was preparing for a battle of the spirit. He stood before the king in his simple tunic. No shield, no helmet, no sword. He took his staff, the symbol of his identity as a shepherd, and walked down to the brook that ran through the valley floor. The water was cool and clear. David knelt. His eyes scanned the riverbed. He wasn't looking for any rock. He needed specific aerodynamics. He chose 5 smooth stones. Why 5? Was it because Goliath had 4 giant brothers? Or was it simply preparation? He put them in his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, he began to walk towards the giant. The walk must have felt like an eternity. The 2 armies watched in disbelief. A hush fell over the Valley of Elah, heavier than before. From the Philistine side, Goliath saw a figure approaching. At first, he must have thought it was a joke, a mockery. As David got closer, the giant's confusion turned to insult. He expected a champion, a warrior in glittering armor. Instead, he got a boy with a stick.
"Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" the giant roared. The sound vibrated in David's chest, but his heart remained steady. Then Goliath cursed David by his gods, by Dagon, by Baal, and by Astarte. He invoked the dark powers of the underworld against the boy. "Come to me," he sneered, lifting his massive spear, "and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." It was a death sentence. But David did not stop walking. He stopped, looked up at the towering mountain of bronze and flesh, and delivered the greatest declaration of war in history. "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin," David shouted, his voice young but cutting through the wind like a knife. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have